At just 19, Elena Ward had a softness that made people underestimate her, and a beauty that made others resent her. She grew up on the edge of a frontier town carved into dust and silence, a place where every secret spread faster than wildfire, and every whisper had the power to destroy lives. Elena learned to walk lightly, speak softly, and smile, even when her heart felt heavy. Her father had died 3 winters ago, leaving her alone with a mother too sick to work, and a small cabin too broken to keep warm. Elena stitched clothes for the town women, baked bread for the bachelors, and nursed injured animals back to health. Yet no matter how much goodness she poured into the world, people found a way to twist it. Jealous tongues called her too pretty. Cruel eyes watched her too closely. Lonely men whispered her name in ways that stained her reputation without her consent. And so, Elena, gentle, kind, harmless Elena, became the easiest target when the town needed someone to blame. For months, tensions between the town and the nearby Apache bands had been rising. Livestock vanished. Supply wagons were attacked. Fear settled over the settlement like a storm cloud. And when fear blooms, justice dies. The town council, desperate and cornered, made a horrifying decision. They would offer a young woman to the Apache as a gesture of peace. It was cowardly, cruel, unthinkable. But no one said a word against it. And when they searched for a girl with no family, no protection, and no voice loud enough to defend herself, there was only one name they whispered: Elena Ward. The announcement happened in the town square at sunset, when the sky glowed gold and the shadows stretched long like fingers reaching for her. Elena stood among the crowd, unaware that her life was about to be rewritten. The mayor unfolded a parchment and read her name aloud. Elena Ward will be offered in peace to the Apache. The words punched the air out of her lungs. A wave of whispers rippled through the crowd. Some murmured in pity. Some hid smug satisfaction. Others simply looked away. But no one stood up for her. Not the women whose babies she had delivered. Not the men whose shirts she had mended. Not the neighbors who borrowed sugar from her late mother. Elena's knees trembled, but her pride kept her standing. She felt the world tilt, felt her future dissolve like dust in wind. Yet she said nothing. She learned long ago that this town had no place for her voice. That night, she returned to her cabin, hands shaking as she locked the door. Fear crashed over her. Fear of the unknown, fear of death, fear of the Apache she had only heard stories about. Still, the deepest wound came from the betrayal. Her own people threw her away like a scrap of cloth. A gentle knock came hours later. When she opened the door, she found Mrs. Harland, an older woman with tired eyes, holding a worn wool shawl. "You'll need this, child," she whispered, placing it into Elena's hands. "The mountains get cold at night." It was the only kindness she received. Morning came too quickly. A heavy silence fell over the town as the Apache riders appeared on the horizon, gliding through the dust with a calm, powerful grace. At the front was Kohana, a tall, broad-shouldered warrior with long black hair braided with feathers, and eyes sharp enough to see the truth hidden behind Elena's trembling smile. The townsfolk watched, from porches and windows, as Elena stood at the edge of the square, back straight, shawl wrapped around her shoulders like a fragile armor. Kohana dismounted slowly. His movements were controlled, respectful, nothing like the brutal image the town had painted of him. He studied Elena with the steady gaze of someone who had survived hardships far greater than prejudice. "You are the one they offer," he asked in a deep, quiet voice. Elena swallowed, unable to hide the tremor in her hands. Yes, he expected fear. Everyone feared him. But what he saw instead was heartbreak. "You fear me," he said softly. She hesitated, then whispered, "Not as much as I fear them." Those 6 words changed something in him. He glanced at the townspeople, cold faces, judgmental eyes, whispers dripping with relief now that they no longer had to fear becoming the sacrifice. Kohana understood cruelty. He had fought enemies, lost loved ones, and watched people turn savage when desperate. But the silent betrayal he witnessed that morning struck him in a deeper place. He turned back to Elena. "Come," he said gently. Instead of grabbing her or pulling her away like the crowd expected, Kohana offered his hand. She stared at it. A simple gesture. Unexpected. Human. With slow steps, she approached him. When her fingers touched his palm, she felt a warmth she didn't expect. A steadiness that contradicted every terrifying story she'd ever heard about Apache warriors. Kohana lifted her onto his horse, not forcefully, not roughly, but carefully, as if afraid she might break. He mounted behind her and murmured, "I will not hurt you." Elena closed her eyes. No townsfolk had ever spoken to her with such certainty. As they rode away, the town stood silently behind them. Some looked guilty, some relieved, some ashamed, but none followed. None cried out her name. None stopped her. And in that moment, Elena realized the painful truth. She did not belong to that place. She never did. As the horse carried her farther into the open land, the wind lifting her hair and the scent of cedar trees filling the air, Elena felt fear and sadness intertwine. But she also felt something new, a quiet, fragile hope. Kohana rode with his back straight and his presence strong, but Elena sensed kindness beneath the strength. He checked the reins gently, slowed the horse when the ground rocked beneath them, and shielded her from the cold mountain breeze with his cloak. This man, this stranger, treated her with more respect in 1 hour than her entire town had shown her in 19 years. And so began the journey that would transform her life, reshape her heart, and lead to a love neither of them expected. The town had thrown her away, but fate, wild, untamed, unstoppable, had delivered her into the hands of a man who would soon give her a wedding gift powerful enough to silence every voice that once whispered against her. A gift forged not from pride or tradition, but from love. The trail into Apache territory wound like a ribbon through towering pines and rocky cliffs, each turn taking Elena farther from the world that had cast her aside. At first, fear clung to her like a second skin. Her fingers stayed curled in the horse's mane, and every distant howl or rustle made her shoulders jolt. But as hours passed, that fear began to change, not disappear, but shift into something calmer, quieter. And the reason for that shift rode right behind her, Kohana. He rode tall and steady, his breaths even, his posture balanced, as if he and the earth beneath him shared a heartbeat. His presence radiated something Elena had never felt so strongly before. Safety. Not the safety of walls or laws or town councils. A deeper safety. One built from strength and steadiness and unspoken promise. Every time the terrain grew rough, he placed a warm, steadying hand near her waist, never touching her unless necessary, never invading her space, always allowing her dignity. When the wind grew sharp in the mountain pass, he wrapped part of his cloak around her shoulders without a word. And when her breath trembled, he murmured gently, "Look ahead. The fear lessens when the world opens." She followed his gaze. Before them, the valley stretched wide, golden grass swaying like painted waves, wildflowers scattering color across the earth, cliffs rising like ancient guardians. It was nothing like the dusty town she came from. Here the land felt alive. Here she felt alive. As evening approached, they reached a ridge overlooking the Apache village, a cluster of lodges glowing with firelight, smoke rising gently into the darkening sky. The scene looked peaceful, almost magical. Elena tensed. This was the place she would live now. These were the people she would live among. Strangers, warriors, families, eyes she feared might judge her. But Kohana leaned forward. "You are safe here," he said quietly. "No one will harm you." It struck her how unusual his voice was. Deep, yes, but also unexpectedly warm, like a quiet fire on a cold night. The villagers noticed their arrival, children running forward, women stepping out of their homes, men lowering tools. Elena expected hostility, suspicion, cold stares. Instead, she found curiosity. The children whispered behind small hands. The women studied her carefully, but without cruelty. The elders nodded with slow, thoughtful interest. Kohana dismounted first, and then offered his hand. Elena hesitated, but only for a heartbeat, before taking it. Her boots touched Apache soil for the first time, and she felt her entire body trembling, despite the warmth of the firelit evening. One of the elders, a woman with silver hair braided tightly and eyes as wise as the moon, stepped forward. "Kohana," she greeted. "Grandmother," he replied softly. This was Nokomis, and there was a tenderness in the way Kohana spoke to her that surprised Elena. Nokomis turned to Elena, studied her face for a long moment, then gently took both of Elena's hands in her own aged, warm ones. "You have sadness in your eyes," she said, "but also spirit. That is good." Elena's breath caught. No one in her town ever cared what her eyes held. Nokomis squeezed her hands. "With us, you will not be unseen." The words cracked something open in Elena's chest, something that had been locked away since childhood. Life in the village unfolded like a slow sunrise. On the first morning, Elena woke to the scent of wood smoke and herbs. She stepped outside to find women grinding maize, men preparing bows, children laughing as they chased a carved wooden hoop. Everything was so different, so unfamiliar, and yet so warm. Kohana approached with 2 cups of herbal tea. "For the cold," he said simply. Elena accepted the cup, her fingers brushing his for a brief moment. A strange warmth fluttered through her. Not fear, not discomfort. Something soft, something dangerous. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded but didn't walk away. Instead, he said, "Come. I will show you the village." He walked at her pace, letting her take in the sights. Women sewing intricate patterns into clothing. Men carving arrows with breathtaking precision. Elderly men sitting in a circle, telling stories in low, rhythmic voices. Children painting stones with bright earth pigments. Kohana explained everything with gentle patience. And Elena found herself listening to the sound of his voice as much as the words themselves. Then came the lesson in riding. "You sit too stiff," he said with a half smile. "You ride like a newborn fawn trying to walk." Elena gasped, half offended, half amused. "I do not." But she did. And she laughed, actually laughed, when the horse bounced unexpectedly and nearly sent her into Kohana's arms. He steadied her, with a hand on her elbow, his touch firm but careful. "You will learn," he murmured. Elena's cheeks flushed. Why did his nearness feel different? Why did her heart beat faster when he spoke her name? As days passed, the sparks between them grew, not loud, not sudden, but soft and steady, like a fire that begins with warm embers. Sometimes she caught him watching her, not with ownership, not with expectation, but with curiosity, with respect, with something deeper she was afraid to name. And Elena found herself watching him too. How he helped the elders carry water. How he let little children climb onto his shoulders. How he listened, really listened, when others spoke. He was not the savage her town had described. He was a protector, a leader, in the making, a man who carried the weight of others' safety in his heartbeat. But the moment that truly changed something between them came during a night of celebration. The tribe gathered around a large fire, drums echoing through the valley as women danced and children clapped. Elena sat near the edge, unsure if she belonged enough to join in. Kohana approached quietly and sat beside her. "You watch the fire, as if searching for answers," he said. "Maybe I am," she confessed. "What do you hope to find?" "A place where I belong," Elena whispered before she could stop herself. Kohana turned toward her, his face illuminated by flickering flame. "You belong where your spirit feels at peace," he said gently. "Not where others decide for you." The words sank into her like warm rain. He reached into a small pouch tied at his waist and pulled out a carved wooden hairpin, shaped like a feather, smooth and beautiful. "For you," he said. Elena stared at it, breath catching. I can't accept this." "You can," he replied softly. "It is not a claim. It is a thank you." "For what?" she asked. "For surviving what they did to you," he said, "and for being stronger than they ever realized." Her eyes filled with tears she didn't dare let fall. "Kohana," she whispered, voice trembling. He leaned closer, slowly, cautiously. "You are safe," he murmured. "You are not alone. And you are worth far more than the world you came from ever allowed you to believe." Elena felt something shift inside her. Fear loosened. Pain softened. Hope rose. And for the first time, she wondered, dangerously, beautifully, if the man who had taken her from the town would one day become the man her heart ran toward instead of away from. Because something was growing between them. Not forced, not demanded, not expected. Something chosen, something gentle, something powerful, something like love. The weeks Elena spent in the Apache village reshaped her life in ways she never imagined. What began as a terrifying exile had become something gentler, something safer, something that made her breath steady and her heart open again. But peace between the Apache and the town required a final step, a marriage ceremony. The council back in town had demanded it. The treaty outlined it, and the tribe needed it to solidify the union. Elena had known this day would come, yet her heart still clenched with fear when the elders approached her. "It is time," one said softly. The words echoed inside her chest. Time. For vows. For a bond she didn't choose. For a union that felt both terrifying and inevitable. She wasn't afraid of Kohana, not anymore. She was afraid of what marriage meant. In her town, marriage was ownership. A woman became a man's shadow, Her choices swallowed, her voice dimmed. Elena had watched too many wives shrink beneath that weight, watched bruises hidden beneath sleeves, watched joy fade from their eyes. That was not a life she ever wanted. So that night, fear pressed heavily against her ribs. But what truly broke her composure was not the decision itself. It was the fear of losing the fragile freedom she had found here, the fragile feelings growing inside her, the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, love could bloom between them someday. She found Kohana near the riverbank at dusk, washing dust from his hands. The sunset painted him in deep gold and soft crimson, making his silhouette look carved from strength and calm. Elena hesitated, then spoke in a trembling voice. "Kohana, may I talk to you?" He turned instantly, sensing the distress in her voice. "Of course." She took a breath, but the words tangled in her throat. "I'm afraid." Kohana's features softened. "Of what?" She swallowed hard. "Of tomorrow. Of being married. Of losing myself." He stepped closer, but not too close. "Elena," he said gently, "you think I will claim you like a possession." Her breath shuddered. "That is what marriage was in my town," she whispered. Kohana nodded slowly, understanding far more than she expected. "Our law is not like theirs," he said. "A wife is not owned, she is honored, and she must choose." She blinked. Choose? She hadn't been allowed to choose anything in years. "I was told I had no choice," she said. Kohana's jaw tightened. "You always have a choice, even if your town forgot that." Silence settled between them, deep but warm. Then, with a steady voice, Kohana told her something that cracked the fear inside her. "Tomorrow, before the tribe and before the spirits, you will be asked if you accept the union. If you say no, I will protect that choice. You will remain under the tribe's protection, but you will not be my wife, and no one will force your hand again." Elena's breath caught. You would let me refuse?" He met her eyes, unwavering. "I would let you breathe." Her throat tightened with emotion. "Kohana, why would you do that? The treaty." "Peace can be built with respect," he said quietly. "Not chains." And then he said something that made her heart tremble. "I want you to choose me only if your spirit calls you to, not your fear." Elena turned away, tears gathering in her eyes, not from sadness, not from fear, from the overwhelming warmth of his kindness. The next morning came with soft sunrise light filtering through the village. The air buzzed with quiet anticipation. Women prepared gifts. Men gathered firewood. Children danced excitedly around the central clearing where the ceremony fire crackled. Elena stood dressed in a simple white duskin dress, handmade by Nokomis and several women who had grown fond of her. The dress hugged her gently, decorated with beadwork patterns symbolizing protection and new beginnings. Her heart hammered, not because she felt trapped, but because she suddenly realized that she wanted to choose. She wanted this moment to mean something real. When Kohana stepped into the clearing, her breath caught. He stood tall, dressed in ceremonial attire, with 2 feathers woven into his braid, symbols of honor and loyalty. His gaze found Elena immediately, as if she were the only person in the world. The tribe gathered in a wide circle. The chief raised his hands and spoke. "Kohana of the Hawk clan, Elena of the town beyond the ridge, today you stand before us to decide whether to unite your lives, not by force, not by law, but by the choice of your hearts." The chief turned to Elena first. "Elena Ward," he said, voice deep and steady, "do you accept this union?" The world fell silent. Elena looked at Kohana, the man who had shown her kindness when the world abandoned her. The man who spoke gently, listened deeply, and treated her with more respect than anyone ever had. The man whose presence had become a place of safety. Her voice wavered, but her heart soared. "I choose him," she whispered. Kohana's breath left him in a soft exhale. Relief, gratitude, something deeper. The chief smiled. "Then let the bond be sealed." Cheers rose from the tribe, drums beating faster, voices lifting in celebration. Women wrapped Elena in a ceremonial shawl. Children tossed petals of colored leaves. Kohana stepped toward her, slow and reverent, and placed his forehead gently against hers. "In choosing me," he murmured, "you honor my heart." Elena closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his breath settle her spirit. But then came the moment that would define everything. It was tradition for the groom to present a wedding gift, something precious, meaningful, or protective. Elena expected jewelry, or beads, or a crafted tool. But Kohana stepped back and gestured toward the edge of the village. 4 men began pulling away a large woven cover. Elena gasped. Behind it stood a house, a small, beautifully built home. 1 room, a porch with smooth wooden beams, a stone hearth, a soft roof of tanned hide and bark, windows facing the sunrise. "Kohana," she whispered, stunned. "This," he said softly, "is my gift." Her hands trembled. "You built this?" "With my own hands," he said. "Every stone, every beam." "But why?" He stepped closer, voice low and warm. "Because every woman deserves a place that belongs only to her, a space where she is safe, a home that is hers. You have lived without that for too long." Elena's throat closed with emotion. "It is yours alone," he continued. "You may invite me in, or not. You may sleep here, or not. You may keep it forever, even if one day you no longer wish to be my wife." Her heart broke open completely. This was not a gift of possession, not a claim, not a demand. It was freedom. It was respect. It was love, expressed without needing to be named. Elena stepped forward with tears in her eyes, placed her hand on his chest, and whispered, "This is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." Kohana's eyes softened. "Then let it be the beginning of your new life," he said. And for a moment, under the rising sun, in the heart of a tribe that welcomed her, beside the man who had given her freedom instead of chains, Elena felt something stir inside her with breathtaking certainty. She had not just chosen him, she had chosen herself. And love, gentle, powerful love, had begun to bloom. H3. The night they finally spoke their truths. The sun dipped low over Willow Creek, painting the horizon in shades of orange and rose gold. The celebration after the wedding had finally died down. The whispers, the stares, the shock over Atsa's priceless wedding gift had faded into distant echoes. But for Elena and Atsa, the night was only beginning. Their new home, Atsa's cabin, built on the edge of the valley, glowed from within. Warm lamplight spilling through the windows. A soft breeze carried the scent of pine and desert sage, brushing her cheeks as he walked beside her, guiding her with slow, steady steps so she wouldn't trip on her dress. Even now, he didn't touch her unless she offered her hand. And tonight, she did. Atsa looked down, his expression unreadable, but his eyes softening as he entwined their fingers. No words, no expectations, no pressure, just quiet understanding. Their first quiet moment alone, inside the cabin, Elena saw pieces of him everywhere. The woven blankets, the carved bowls, the shelves lined with turquoise stones and feathers arranged with care. This place didn't feel foreign or harsh the way she expected. It felt lived in, honored, peaceful, like him. She stood in the center of the room, hands folded nervously, while Atsa lit a final lantern. The warm glow wrapped around his features, softening the sharp angles of his face, making him look less like the mysterious warrior the town feared, and more like the man who had given her his mother's necklace with trembling hands. He finally spoke. "You are safe here," he said. "If you wish to sleep alone tonight, you will. If you wish to talk, I will listen. Whatever you need, Elena, we will do that." No man in Willow Creek had ever given a woman that much choice. It struck her deeply. I want to talk," Elena whispered. He nodded once, slowly, as if he'd been hoping she'd say that. A soft fire, a quiet room, two hearts finally opening. They sat by the fireplace, a soft crackling filling the silence. Atsa poured her warm tea made from desert herbs, sweetened with a drop of honey he had collected himself. Elena took a sip, closing her eyes briefly. "You made this?" she asked. He nodded. "My mother taught me. She said every woman deserves warmth and sweetness at the end of a long day." Her heart clenched at that, at the gentleness woven into him. "I don't understand something," she said finally. "Why me? Why did you choose me?" Atsa's gaze lifted, steady and sincere. "In my culture," he said quietly, "a man listens to his spirit. And mine has been calling your name since the day I first saw you in the market." Her breath hitched. "You didn't even know me. But my heart recognized yours." The honesty in his voice struck her like a touch she wasn't prepared for. Soft, warm, but powerful. Elena speaks her truth. She took a breath, fingers tightening around the mug. "When the town found out you wanted to marry me," she said, voice trembling, "they pitied me. They said I was ruined, trapped, helpless." Atsa's jaw tightened just slightly. "I know," he murmured. "I heard them." "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because your opinion," he said simply, "matters more than theirs." Her throat tightened. "No one has ever cared more about what I feel than what they think." Atsa looked at her with a seriousness that felt like gravity. "Elena, I did not choose you because I had to. I chose you because your laugh stayed in my mind for weeks, because your kindness to people who did not deserve it stayed in my heart, because when you looked at me that day, you did not look with fear." He paused. "You looked with curiosity, and that is how every love story begins." A silence filled with meaning. Elena looked away, fighting the warmth spreading in her chest. "People think you're dangerous," she whispered. Atsa didn't flinch. "I am." Her eyes widened, but he continued before she could speak. "I am dangerous to those who threaten what I love, but not to you." Something in his voice, quiet, firm, unwavering, made her pulse quicken. "You really mean that?" asked softly. He nodded once. Yes. Her fear, his patience. Elena's fingers brushed the turquoise necklace resting against her collarbone. "It's beautiful," she said for the 10th time that day. "I've never received anything so meaningful." Atsa smiled faintly. "And yet, you wear it more gracefully than she ever did." She froze. Your mother? He nodded. She was a good woman, but you have a fire she didn't. Her cheeks warmed. I'm not brave, she whispered. Atsa shook his head. You are stronger than you think. You accepted a path you did not choose, and you walk it with grace. That is courage. No one had ever told her that, especially not with that much conviction. Asta's voice lowered, softer, warmer. And I will honor that courage every day you choose to stay with me. She looked at him, eyes searching. What if I don't know yet? Then, he said with a slow exhale, I will wait. The first touch that was not a mistake. A quiet fell over them again. Not uncomfortable, not awkward, but charged. Soft, hopeful. Atsa reached for her hand, but like before, he paused halfway. She stared at his hand, hovering between them. His waiting, his patience, his respect. And without thinking, without fear, without hesitation, she placed her hand in his. A small spark raced up her arm. He exhaled softly, as if her touch had taken the weight of the world off his chest. Elena, he murmured, voice low, almost reverent. You do not know what this means to me. I think I'm starting to, she whispered. The conversation deepens, and so does the connection. For the next hour, they spoke about everything. His life, her dreams, his lost family, her loneliness in the judgmental town, his fear that she would never accept him, her shock that he had chosen her above all others. He told her how he'd seen her defend a stranger in the market weeks ago. She told him how she'd noticed the way he helped an injured dog without hesitation. He shared the hardships of his tribe. She shared the burdens of her heart. Piece by piece, truth by truth, their walls fell. Until they were no longer strangers, no longer forced partners, but something much more delicate and precious. Something that felt like the beginning of love. The moment everyone waits for. Atsa leaned closer, not touching, not assuming, just near enough that she could feel his warmth, smell the earthy scent of cedar and smoke clinging to him. Elena, he whispered, if you want me to stop. Don't. She breathed. His eyes darkened, not with danger, not with possession, but with overwhelming relief. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he brought his forehead to hers. Their breaths mingled, their lips hovered close, their fingers intertwined fully now, not hesitantly. This wasn't the moment the town imagined, not the moment forced by tradition, not the moment driven by fear or expectation. This was two hearts choosing each other, quietly, gently, honestly. And then, the first kiss. Elena closed the distance, soft, warm, real. Atsa's hand slid to her cheek, careful and reverent, as if she were something sacred. She felt the tremble in his palm, the unspoken emotion in his breath. It wasn't a kiss of ownership. It wasn't a kiss of demand. It was a promise of a life where she was valued, protected, cherished. When they finally parted, Elena whispered, I'm not afraid anymore. Atsa rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed, voice rough with emotion. Then this is the beginning, not the end. Morning light crept over the valley, slipping through the cracks of the cabin like golden whispers. Elena woke with the softest smile on her lips. Not because the night had been perfect, though it had been gentle, honest, and full of truths, but because she finally felt seen. For the first time in her life, Elena wasn't a burden, wasn't a rumor, wasn't a fragile girl to be pitied. She was someone's chosen, someone's equal, someone's heart. And Atsa, he had changed everything. The ride back to town. Atsa prepared the horses while Elena braided her hair, tucking in 2 tiny desert blossoms he picked for her at dawn. "They suit you," he said quietly. She blushed, something she never did before him. They rode side by side toward Willow Creek, the necklace he gifted her, glimmering against her skin each time sunlight hit it. Atsa kept glancing at it with undisguised pride, like the necklace found its rightful place. As they approached town, whispers rose like smoke from every direction. "She's wearing it? He really gave her his mother's necklace. They look happy? Is she smiling? They're holding hands. No, he's letting her lead." Atsa's jaw tightened instinctively, but Elena squeezed his hand. "It's all right," she whispered. "They can watch. They'll see soon enough." HTTP, first strong. Faces that once judged, now looked away. The same women who once called Elena poor thing, now lowered their eyes. The same men who mocked Atsa's presence, now pretended to admire barrels and windowsills. The children stared with round eyes, not with fear, but with curiosity. But there was one person Elena expected to speak. Strong Mayor Thompson. The man who announced her marriage would bring shame to the town. He rushed out of his office, ready to scold, ready to assert control, ready to remind everyone that Elena marrying an Apache was a dangerous scandal. But when he saw the necklace on her neck, saw the way Atsa walked slightly behind her as a sign of respect, his words died. "Miss Lawson, I hope your first night was peaceful." Elena didn't bow, didn't flatten herself, didn't shrink. She said calmly, "Thank you." Atsa had taught her that confidence didn't require raising your voice. It just required truth. A public challenge. The mayor, flustered, cleared his throat. "Well, the townspeople still have concerns." Atsa didn't speak, didn't glare, didn't move. He simply took Elena's hand, and she stepped forward. "What concerns?" she asked. The crowd watching tensed. Whispers rustled. Someone finally shouted, "We just don't know if you'll keep you safe." And that was the moment everything changed. Because Elena, gentle, soft-spoken Elena, lifted her chin. "He already has." Her voice rippled through the crowd like a warm wind. She continued, "When this town mocked me, he defended me. When people said I was nothing, he gave me the most precious thing he owned. When you tried to shame me, he showed me respect." A murmur swept across the street. Atsa's fingers tightened around hers, but only to steady her, not to silence her. And when the entire town waited to see tragedy, she said, glancing around, "He gave me a love none of you believed I deserved." Dead silence. Not even the horses shuffled. The moment. That broke the town's pride. Atsa stepped forward just slightly, but he still let her speak. Then she reached up and touched her necklace. "This belonged to his mother," she said. "He gave it to me because he wants a future with me, because he believes in me." Her voice softened. "And because of that, I am no longer the girl you pitied." Someone whispered, "She's different." Another, "No, she's stronger." Her gaze swept the crowd. "You judged him. You judged me. And yet, who among you has ever treated me the way he has. Nobody answered. Not one person. H3. Atsa's turn, a warrior's promise in front of them all. Then Atsa finally spoke, not loud, not threatening, not dramatic, just steady, just true. Elena is my wife, and in my people's way, that means I walk beside her, not ahead of her. I protect her, but I do not cage her. I listen to her voice, not silence it. He looked directly at the people who once sneered at him. I did not take her by force. I offered her my life, and she accepted. Gasps filled the air. Not fear, not scandal, respect. One of the older women stepped closer, squinting at Elena's necklace. Is it real turquoise? She asked softly. Atsa nodded. From my mother's homeland. The woman pressed a hand over her chest. It's beautiful. And with that small, honest admission, the wall finally cracked. The crowd softens. Soon others came forward. I misjudged you, a shopkeeper said quietly. We were wrong, another whispered. She looks happy, that's what matters, a mother added. Even Mayor Thompson cleared his throat and said, Perhaps I spoke too harshly before. If he treats you well, then we should be grateful. Elena smiled gently. You should be. It wasn't arrogance. It was truth. And it landed. The woman who once mocked her steps forward. There was one final person to face. Clara Whitmore, the woman who spread the worst rumors about Elena being desperate. Clara approached hesitantly. Elena, she said softly, I am sorry. Atsa looked ready to intervene, but Elena squeezed his wrist. Clara's voice trembled. I thought he married you because he had to, but after what we saw yesterday, after today, I realize he married you because he couldn't imagine someone else having you. It was clumsy, it was awkward, but it was real. I hope you'll forgive us, Clara whispered. Elena took a breath. I forgive you, she said, but I also hope you learn from this. Clara nodded, tears gathering. H3 strong, a new reputation. That day marked a turning point. No longer was Elena the poor girl forced into a strange marriage. No longer was Atsa the dangerous Apache warrior who stole a bride. They became something else. The couple who defied the odds. The couple who respected each other. The couple who turned judgment into awe. A strong, within days, shopkeepers greeted Atsa with nods of respect. Women asked Elena where she got her necklace. Children begged Atsa for stories of his people. Older men admired Atsa's discipline and honor. The transformation was complete. But the most meaningful moment came at sunset, when Elena and Atsa walked past the saloon and heard someone whisper, There goes Mr. and Mrs. Lawson, the strongest couple in town. Elena blushed. Atsa squeezed her hand. H3, the ending that feels like a beginning. That evening, as they rode home through the quiet valley, Elena rested her head on Atsa's shoulder. I didn't expect any of this, she whispered. Atsa kissed her forehead. Neither did I, but the spirits guide what is meant to be. Do you think they guided us? She asked softly. Atsa looked at their joined hands. I think, he murmured, they led me to you, and you chose me. She smiled. And I'll keep choosing you. Atsa breathed out, as if her words filled the world. Then, he whispered, we will build a life that even the wind will speak of. The horses carried them home, under a sky painted with silver stars. 2 hearts, 1 path, a love that survived judgment, whispers, fear, and transformed everything it touched. And in Willow Creek, they would never be the same again.